Well, this was on 3 that they showed the various scheduling breakdowns that the Big Ten ADs are considering. Did you see those 3? So there's the Protect 3. So you have 3 protected games, 3 rivals that are set, and then you split the rest of the conference. Or Protect 2, split the rest of the conference into 7 and 6 and alternate those. Or what I like, I went ballistic when I saw this in a good way.
I saw that. I didn't know you could get that excited. I didn't know you could get that excited.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't, because I've been only recommending this about every year for about 10 years and producing videos on here.
I know where you're going.
Of a flex protect schedule. Not every school has the same number of rivalries. So why are we protecting games against teams that aren't rivals, that don't need to be protected? We can provide more scheduling flexibility if we just say, okay, Nebraska needs to play X, Y, and Z, but Northwestern only has to play X, et cetera, et cetera. So much more scheduling flexibility, and it makes sense. There's no reason to force teams to have to play each other.
No.
I don't understand that.
Nope.
So what do you think we're going to end up with?
Well, I'm hoping that, as evidenced by my reaction.
Okay, well, so it basically seems like the smartest moves, which means immediately they're probably not going to do that.
Good point.
I look like I just stabbed you in the eyeball.
It makes sense, right?
I would love to be in those meeting rooms and see who's fighting against that. It just makes total sense to me. You're Iowa. Okay, who do you have to play? Who do you really need to play? Go to each team. I'm not saying that I'm the mastermind that determines everybody's rivals. Go to the schools. Talk to the schools. Who do you want to play? Who do you believe you should be playing every year? Obviously, that makes sense.
Who puts more butts in your seats in those games?
Well, I don't necessarily believe that. Then everyone would say Ohio State.
Well, that's a factor. No, that factors into it. I'm just saying, rivalry-wise, I wasn't even thinking about Ohio State's and Michigan's in that sense. My bad.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking Northwestern. They should play Illinois.
No, I mean, I'm talking
other than that,
graphically where the visiting team's fan base can come much easier.
In order to know who Northwestern wants to play, you'd have to talk to their fans, and then you first have to find them.
I don't think they could tell you that. No, I think they would be dumbfounded if you asked that question.
Well, who is it for Nebraska for you guys?
Obviously Iowa. I think Wisconsin would be another one, and Minnesota. So,
I mean, is it Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, or is it Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota?
I think it's kind of the latter there. But,
yeah.
But, I mean, Northwestern doesn't do anything. I mean, yes, it's been a fascinating series with a lot of good games, but and that's an easy road trip for Nebraska fans. They get to go to Chicago. But still, though, I mean, that matchup, year in and year out, that doesn't do anything for Nebraska fans.
The problem is again, I think rivalries are best when you like the Iowa people. I mean, I hate Iowa. I rip Iowa apart all the time, and I get Iowa people responding to me in kind, and that's the fun for me. And Northwestern just doesn't do that really for me at all. And
they're not in that same category as the three others, in my opinion. Is that maybe Northwestern once in a while might win the West, but that's a fluke, really, when it happens. But those three, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, they've been dueling it out, and those are always hard-fought physical games that are played in the trenches, and Nebraska's been on the losing end of the trenches battle with this for a lot of years. But I think you're going to see a switch in that, but it doesn't change who I think Nebraska wants to make sure that they beat those 3 teams.
Right.
And Northwestern doesn't really come into the conversation, in my opinion, or Illinois. Yeah, I mean, so.
Yeah, Illinois is just kind of there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And then, same with Purdue.
And Purdue. Even though Purdue's very competitive and has done well, but I think you're right. Purdue doesn't come into the conversation either. So, yeah.
So USC and UCLA?
Yeah, now we're changing subjects because you're adding 2 more in there.
Well, that's where it's going, right? I mean, if you said Iowa,
no, that changes our whole conversation, obviously. Yeah.
Well, then would you put USC and UCLA? Would you put them there with Minnesota and Wisconsin?
Well, you have to, I think, really.
What about you, Mark?
And I just want to go cover those road games.
That's it. There's always a ulterior motive.
Exactly.
Nebraska fans may not like my answer. I think Nebraska only has 1 rival, and that's Iowa.
That's kind of where I was at, yeah.
And I think that's the only game that they have to play every year. Because let's understand something that
good point.
That whatever they do, the alternative isn't as big a mistake as it is in other conferences. Meaning, if a team doesn't get selected to be Nebraska's rival or common opponent, they're still going to play them every other year. Yeah. It's not like they're going to be banished to another division. They're going to see them once every 4 years. They're playing everybody else in the conference every other year. So it's not the end of the world.
No. Actually, to me, that you want some more variety in there as well. I don't know. It's hard to say when you grow up watching, say, the Big 8 morph into the Big 12, and then you move to the Big 10. Back when you were in the Big 8, you always knew you were going to play everybody every year. Big 12, things kind of changed a little bit. And then now in the Big 10, obviously it's different. And now you're adding 2 more teams into it. So, you're not going to get the chance to have those same rivalry games year in and year out anymore, just for the way things work.
Yeah, I think that guy said that we had rivalries with Minnesota and UCLA. We had Minnesota was really our first, I think, true rival way back in. We played Iowa in 1892, 1894, but Minnesota was the team that really put Nebraska on the national map because Minnesota got known early in the late 1890s, early 1900s because of a coach they had that came up with the shift. Basically, nobody had shifted before the offensive play started. And he came up with that. And that way the people in the East who were the Harvard, Yale, Penn people got to know him. And Minnesota started playing Nebraska regularly. And I'm going a long ways down this. But Minnesota and Nebraska.
Give us a history lesson again.
Those were like those 5-3 games.
Minnesota and Nebraska in the late 1890s, early, let's say 1904 to like 1925. People don't know that because they focus on like in the 1920s, we played Notre Dame and Notre Dame's still well known now and Minnesota's kind of faded away. But that's a video I'll probably do coming up about the history of early rivalry between Minnesota and Nebraska. And they were huge games because Minnesota was a powerhouse. Minnesota won the first AP poll in 36. I think Nebraska was rated 15th in that poll. So, So Minnesota does go back. It just, they went away for a long time. And I'm biased. I'd like to see Nebraska come up here and play. I'm not that thrilled that we're playing on Thursday night to start the season. I wish it was Saturday, but.
Hey, we love it.
Do you like that?
Well, yeah, we don't have to go there in November.
Well, that's true. Guy that hates the cold.
Yeah, you got to get out there in August, man. It's beautiful.
It is. That's true.
Well, I think there are levels to rivalries. So when Greg brings up Wisconsin and Minnesota, it's not that I don't think that they are rivals. It's not like you're bringing up Rutgers or Maryland there where there is no connection. I do think that there are rivalries within the division at different stages, Iowa being the most, and as you guys both outlined, Wisconsin and Minnesota being next. And then the other ones, they're kind of formulated as rivals because they play in the same division and they're competing for the same championship, but that's the only reason you could put the rivalry tag on Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern at all.
Well, I would say that when Nebraska joined the Big Ten, they were pushing that rivalry was Nebraska-Iowa,
Sure.
right? Because of, they had played each other quite a bit because of their proximity. But, when you think about those first couple of years of Nebraska being in the Big Ten, they were dueling Wisconsin, Russell Wilson. So I think that kind of captured Nebraska fans' hearts more of a rivalry, Big Ten rivalry than Iowa, because Nebraska fans never thought much about Iowa. I mean, they never considered them as a rival, and that has gone on through the years. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the players. I'm talking the fan bases. And we all know the fan bases are what drives these rivalry conversations in the first place. The players couldn't care less. They're going to go play whoever lines up across from them each and every Saturday, right? But yes, is there more on the line in some of these games? Of course. Nebraska finally got the Freedom Trophy back from Iowa this year after getting butts pounded, the last however many years. So, there is a little bit extra in some of these games that we're trying to call rivalries, but it's more for the fans than it is for the players.
I guess I go back to a tweet I saw where somebody says, "Poor Iowa, everybody hates you, and even your friends don't like you that much." And it was somebody from another conference, and I thought that's a really good description of Iowa.
I love it. That's amazing.
So I wonder what everybody else would really want to hang on to, and how do they determine that? I mean, these guys that make decisions. That's probably the biggest thing. Is who are they talking to? Who are they listening to?
Yeah.
How do you influence them? That's what I want to know.
They're going to the schools. I know that. Like the conference is having a back and forth with the schools for one thing, of course. They're talking to the ADs and whomever else weighs in on that decision. And then I've got to think that maybe the TV partners get involved.
Got it.